Your team is bigger than ever, and yet it feels like you're getting less done than you used to when you were smaller. If this is something you are experiencing, you are not alone. This is a team productivity trap not only I have experienced, but I've also seen evidenced in the behind-the-scenes data I've reviewed from over 4,000 small businesses. If you fix the root cause, your team productivity will go through the roof and this plateau will end. But if you don't, you'll just end up hiring and hiring and hiring until your profitability goes through the floor. Ask me how I know. So what we're going to talk about today is how we can fix this issue. But to explain how to fix this, I think it's best I tell you a story. One day, a woman we'll call Maria decided to open her own business, which was an Etsy shop where she created wood-turned pieces like the one you see here. In the very early days of running her shop, it was a struggle. Maria had to flip between trying to sell her product, following up on orders, to building the actual product itself. It was a lot to juggle. In each area of her business, she was juggling 3 categories of work. It was fixing what was broken, getting the day-to-day stuff done, and then hopefully, if she had a little extra time, doing the extra work she knew it would take to grow the business beyond where it was today. It was tough to balance it all, but she did it. She did it so well, in fact, that eventually she needed to hire help, and she started adding freelancers to her team. One person to help by running ads on the marketing side, another person to come over and help with customer support. She added in these fractional helpers that would theoretically lighten her load and give her less to do. Now, Maria got very lucky with her contractors. They did a great job on the work she hired them for, but she immediately started to realize the challenge with fractional labor that many of us have experienced at some point or another. Contractors, especially the ones she hired, were focused on delivering their work at the time intervals that were agreed upon. They were serving a purpose, giving the stuff away, and then checking out. That was the fractional vendor relationship. But this required some adjustment for Maria, because when she was doing everything, she was naturally and instinctively keeping things in balance. When she had free time, she'd market more. When she was overwhelmed, she'd market less. She'd adjust and adjust to make sure everything was flowing properly. Now that there was these freelancers who was just delivering the work consistently at a consistent pace every single month, you'd have more leads coming into her Etsy shop. Oh my goodness. Maria would have to monitor these contractors and work with them to start and pause and adjust contracts and deliverables to make sure there was enough marketing for what the business needed. There was enough hourly support help for what the business needed, so that all of the different areas of the business were balanced, because she didn't want a giant wait list. She didn't want to have too much inventory. She had to keep all of the pieces going. And the only person balancing all that weight was Maria. She was acting as the human duct tape, holding together these fractional contractors to each part of her core business. Now, to state the obvious here, this was extra work for Maria. Yeah, she didn't have to do the work that the freelancers were doing anymore, but she still had to do management. And there's a reason that management and being a manager is a job in and of itself, because this added extra work for her being this duct tape. The strain of being the duct tape, holding together these workers to what the business actually needed, was very tiring for Maria. So like many of us along our business journey, she realized employees might be the way to go. She figured if she could have employees come on who could cover an entire area of the business, they could do this adjustment to make sure that the amount of ads we had matched the campaigns that we needed to have, or the amount of hours for customer support that we budgeted for the month matched the amount of customers we expected to have. She figured if she could take this duct tape off of herself and give it to other people, that would help, right? Over the years to come with Maria's Etsy empire, she added 4 employees. She added 1 for each major department, 1 operator, and then there was herself kind of floating amongst everything. With the employees in place, Maria was able to step back from that duct tape position with contractors, but instead, she was now acting as the duct tape between the team members, making sure that they were in balance and working on the right things. But as Maria steadily grew her team beyond 5 employees, to 10, to 15, to 20, to 25, because she really is good at making those turned wood objects. Now, as her empire grew, Maria did what any good leader would do, in that she created a little metrics dashboard for herself. She looked at how are things going in the business on a week-by-week basis. And what she realized is as she added more overhead, she added more people, she essentially was creating a car with a powerful engine, but square tires. It had all of the ingredients to be a successful business, and yet profits were lower than ever. Things were getting done slower than ever. And worst of all, her employees were not necessarily the happiest. She'd hear feedback like, I feel like my work is just not important. Or, gosh, I just feel like I never get things done right. She'd see team turnover spike. And when she looked at that key metrics dashboard for her business, what she'd realize is that key indicators would be going the wrong direction even as her team had more time. And this is crazy because Maria, she used to run all this herself and she knows it is possible. And yet with a team of 5, she was producing less than when it was just her by herself. So what the heck is going on? A great example of this is when Maria was looking at her metrics dashboard and she noticed that support tickets were a lot higher than usual. There was people complaining in the Etsy shop at a higher rate than usual, and she wasn't sure what was going on. When she sat down with the people working on customers, so her employee and her contractors, she realized that time was really being spent on answering support tickets one by one, which sounds fine, except when she looked at those support tickets, she realized so many of them could have been prevented. They could have an FAQ on the Etsy listing that would prevent people from asking, hey, is there a return policy? And so she made this change. She made this adjustment. She said, hey, customer people, let's create some FAQs. And she walked away thinking that the tire was now round. At least the customer pillar will start running correctly. You can kind of guess what happened next. About a month later, she went back to that same key metrics dashboard and she saw, the number of support tickets were way down. Awesome, great job. But the response time was way up, meaning we had less support tickets to answer and yet it was taking us longer to respond to them. What the heck? The wheel was square again. So she sat down with the customer department. She looked at what was happening. And lo and behold, what ended up happening is the customer team was prioritizing creating everything as an FAQ. If a question came in, even if it only happened once, they would create an FAQ on the website to prevent that particular question. And it made it take forever to get through every single customer support ticket. These kinds of square wheel scenarios would be happening again and again and again until eventually Maria would find herself in masterminds or talking with friends and just saying, it feels like no one I hire has any common sense. We're constantly just reacting to problems and we're never even getting anything done. It's like it was better when it was just me, myself, and I. And if you're watching this video nodding along because you can relate to what Maria is sharing here in the story of Maria, it's because what she has experienced is what I and hundreds of my clients have experienced. And it's what I call the human duct tape trap. And if you can relate to what Maria is saying here, do me a favor and write the word tape in the comments. That'll just let me and everybody else watching this video know that we are not crazy. Because what I have realized, both for myself who has gone through this and for the hundreds of clients I've seen firsthand go through this challenge, is that the human duct tape trap is super common, super fixable, but also super frustrating. It's isolating and it makes you feel like you're going crazy. Let's play back what happened with Maria so we can learn from it to prevent this plateau in our own businesses in the future. Error number 1. Maria was the brain of the business, which in itself isn't a bad thing. That's how every business tends to start, is the brain power of an individual or small group. But as she went to grow, when she found herself getting constrained, that it was taking too much of a brain tax to balance all these contractors, rather than solving for that bottleneck, she just decentralized it a little bit. So she went from being the human duct tape, holding everybody together, making sure everyone knew what to do. You do this, no, you do that, no, you do this. She went from doing that to having a bunch of smaller mini Marias doing that exact same thing. So rather than replacing that human bottleneck, she just spread it out a little bit and turned each employee into that exact same bottleneck. As a result, each of those employees ended up experiencing the same strain that Maria herself did. They were needing to balance everyone underneath them getting their work done, their own work, keeping track of what needs to happen, and everything in that department, in that case, was running through one person's brain. If something needed to happen, they needed to remember it. If someone else needed to do something, they needed to remember it. It was all of the same stress that Maria experienced, except now at a larger scale, because even though it was just one department, the business had grown and there was a lot of information being shoved around. Each employee in each department ended up feeling exactly like Maria did, except unlike Maria, who could delegate it and pass the struggle on to another person, these employees were kind of just stuck in this position. They couldn't delegate it, but to add fuel to the fire, these employees also had Maria's oversight, which should feel like a support, but when you're overwhelmed, extra pressure is extra pressure, and the stress levels were rising. As we added more employees, we went from 1 human bottleneck to 4 human bottlenecks, and the same problem just spread out and multiplied. Now, the next phase and the next mistake was really how the troubleshooting went from there. When Maria realized that the car was driving with square tires and things weren't getting done properly, she worked with the person to try to fix it. But the next problem that happened is that when Maria started trying to fix this issue, it wasn't proactive. She wasn't getting ahead of it and giving people the behaviors that would solve this problem. No, we weren't proactive at all. Instead, we were reactive. We noticed key metrics were going the wrong direction and we're like, crisis, let's fix it. And we tried our best to fix it. Wash, rinse, and repeat. When we end up in this cycle, either as a leader or as a team member, constantly fixing mistakes rather than anticipating them, is we end up not moving forward. We end up spending all of our time fixing things and reacting to things rather than feeling in control. And newsflash, when your day is dictated to you by issues that come up or fires or emergencies, you're generally going to have a more stressful workplace. It's going to feel more chaotic, more out of control. And this is the worst part, the real kicker here is you're not going to get to do the things that really move the business forward. So both at Maria's level and for each employee, if we really peel it back, we find this pattern of fixing mistakes and reacting happening again and again and again. What ends up happening in this kind of environment is we have these productive individuals, these employees and these founders who are great at what they do. But because they are constantly inundated by emergencies, reactions, oh gosh, what are we supposed to do next? All of a sudden, they're not getting things done. They are individually productive, but as a team, the team productivity is absolute shite. And so they're not able to move forward. What Maria accidentally ended up doing is rather than solving the problem of her being overwhelmed and having too much to juggle, she just duplicated it by spreading the issue to all of her employees. She never actually fixed the question, the core challenge, which is how do I become productive in a team environment? No, she didn't solve that. Instead, she just added more productive individuals, gave them no way to work together, and then was surprised when, as a team, the team productivity was absolute trash. That is the trap of human duct tape. We take the problem of a human bottleneck and we just replicate it rather than actually fixing it. To fix it, we need to start practicing team productivity. Quick side note, I've spent the last 7 years really trying to wrestle with this question of team productivity. How do we do it effectively? And in the description of this video, I have a 1-hour masterclass that goes over my full, complete solution as to how you fix this in your business. So if you want to dive deeper, check that out for free. But for today, let's just help Maria, okay? So in Maria's situation, or in your situation, if you are finding yourself in the human duct tape trap, there are 3 steps we can take to solve and undo this human bottleneck problem and go from a state of individual productivity into a state of team productivity. It's just 3 things we need to do. So if you're ready to get started, say ready. Just kidding, because I can't hear you. So I'm just going to say ready. Okay, wonderful. Step 1 of a team productivity system is transparency. So we want to bring transparency to all of the things that would otherwise be floating in our head. I covered this in detail in this video, which seems to have really resonated with the ADHD community. Our goal here is just to create a shared to-do list for our team. This is something Maria could have done back at the contractor stage to prevent all the headaches from happening for her employees. But if you are someone like Maria who has employees already, go ahead and implement this now. Because like they say, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Same thing applies to task lists, okay? Create a shared task list, preferably inside a software. If you don't know what kind of software would work for your to-do list, you can watch this video where I help you decide. And if you're not convinced that a task list is even worth having, you can watch this video where I basically just yell at you for an hour to convince you that task lists are worth having. I stress this fact so much because over the last 6 months, I've analyzed data from over 3,000 small teams who took our systemization snapshot assessment, which is our free operations quiz I'll have linked in the description. And from those 3,000 responses, only about 22% of teams actually had a way to see what other people are working on. In other words, 80% of teams are facing this human duct tape trap. They are in a situation where knowing what happens is something that relies on human memorization. That is not great because human brains are great for processing things, but is not the best place to store a long task list, okay? So please do what Maria did not do and do step 1 today to make sure you're not creating a bunch of little duct tape zombies crawling around your business as well. Once you've got that down, we're ready for step 2, which is to start actually categorizing these tasks. Specifically, what I advise my clients to do is to categorize your tasks into 3 general categories: improvement, maintenance, and repairs or fixes. These 3 categories allow you to start seeing how your time is being spent, not just what you are spending your time on. In Maria's case, if she had been able to see this kind of transparency, she could have realized before the key business metrics started moving in the wrong direction that her team's time was being spent in a way that didn't quite make sense. If we see a customer support team spending 100% of their time on maintenance and no time on improving things, well, it's likely stands to reason that, man, those FAQs aren't being updated enough. Likewise, if more than 50% of a support team's time is spent on improving the website, that's going to raise some red flags. This is reporting that we can do in near real time. If we have these 2 steps in place, it's going to give us faster response times than if we were to wait until our key metrics went in the wrong direction, and allow us to start measuring what success looks like, not just business-wide, but in each department of the business as well. And no, this is not just a hypothetical exercise. This becomes a living and breathing dashboard to help you see the real-time pulse by person, by department, by week of everything that happens in your business. This kind of categorization can then be reported on in nice little charts and tables that show you what is happening in each area of your business at any moment in time automatically. And no, this is not just theory. This is something we have here at ProcessDriven, and it's also something we have every single client in our Foundations program set up using our templates. So here's a view of the tasks worked on at ProcessDriven in the last 365 days. You can see that there are 69% that are maintenance tasks, almost 19% that are improving something, and 12% reacting to issues or emergencies that come up. Now, once we're starting to track tasks and we're reporting on it in categories, we unlock the ability to manage to those metrics, to actually see, what is the right percentage to be spending on maintenance work versus improvement work in our marketing department? How does that change seasonally? How does that change over summer? What has worked well for us in the past? What's going to work well for us in the future? We can start actually seeing what success looks like. There's this phrase in business of what got you here won't get you there, meaning things need to change over time. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Maria. If you think back to when you or Maria was a one-person business or a tiny team, a lot of this balancing that I'm now talking about doing manually, it was happening. It was. Maria instinctively knew, oh gosh, I don't have any time to market, so I'm not going to market and I'm going to spend more time on fulfillment. Oh gosh, I've got too much time on fulfillment, not enough orders. I'm going to spend a little less time on fulfillment, a little bit more time on marketing. This kind of calibration of balancing these 3 categories was happening. It was just happening based on instincts. When Maria hit the human duct tape plateau, it wasn't because the system was bad. Her concept of instinctively balancing all the departments was correct. But she couldn't just balance herself anymore. This is no longer an individually productive system. She needed to factor in all these other people and what they needed to work on. And that is more than one human brain is meant to instinctively balance. So that's why the plateau started to happen. That's why the human duct tape trap is so scary, because you just get stuck there and you don't realize why. So in order to get to this next level, we're not trying to break what is normal and instinctive and entrepreneurial and creative about Maria or anyone else. We're just trying to take it to a level where it's not just built for one person, it's built for a team. And that requires these 3 steps of tracking our tasks, categorizing them just like you do in your head automatically, and reporting on them. Because when we are working together, we need to modify our individual behaviors. We might feel like doing an improvement task one week, but the business really needs fixing of mistakes. We might feel like fixing mistakes, but the business really needs the day-to-day work done. By making sure we're managing to the metrics of what actually works for our business, we're able to build an operating system that's bigger than any one individual. It's bigger than our moods. It's bigger than our feelings. It's more reliable than just Maria's memory because it's based on numbers of what has actually worked. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, taking these 3 steps is ridiculous. This is way too much work. I should just hire A players and make sure all of them have common sense. To you, my friend, I would like to point out that A players are very rare. They're very rare and they're very expensive. So maybe you will find that unicorn, but why? Because even if you hired an entire team with founder type personalities, people who could manage all of these things through mental math, why? Why would you hire a bunch of savants when you can just give people a damn calculator? That's what this is doing. It's making what is common sense to you, which, by the way, common sense is not a thing. I have a whole video on that up here. But we're making what's common sense into something that is a simple formula. So anyone can figure out how to do it, even if they can't find the square root of 72 on the top of their head. Now, if you watch the free bonus training in the description, you'll see my full blueprint for how you can build out a team productivity system for your team to solve not just the human duct tape problem, but the problems that come after that. But it all really starts with what we're covering here, which is task management. The problem is most people are creating and managing tasks completely incorrectly. And that can make this duct tape trap actually worse instead of better. You can't afford to be messing this up. So to learn about how to create tasks the correct way, watch this video on the end screen, check out that training in the description, and until next time, enjoy the process.